Black Myth Wukong just released a free benchmark tool for us to test our systems and see how the game would perform when it comes out in a week. I'm very excited for this game, so I did some testing today. I'm sure there are already tons of benchmark results all over the internet by now, but since my PC is running Linux, I think I can still provide something valuable to people. First, let me set the launch options so that I can screen record the benchmark. I didn't change the Proton settings, so I think it's running with Proton Experimental by default. This is only necessary when you're running GNOME under Wayland, I believe. Also, I'm using an NVIDIA GPU, the RTX 3060M from AliExpress to be exact, though it may be the worst combination. If my system can run the benchmark well enough, I am confident to say that the majority of people with a decent GPU will get even better results, especially if you are using an AMD GPU. I think it's fantastic that the game developers released a benchmark tool before the official launch. This gives people a chance to see how the game might perform on their system, although the benchmark results may not be a perfect reflection of actual gameplay. I'm hoping this is the worst case scenario because of all the vegetation, but we'll have to wait and see. I skipped the shader compilation and ran the benchmark once to allow the shaders to load completely, resulting in smoother performance for the rest of the test. Since I'm using OBS to record everything, there's a slight performance loss. In my experience, the difference between recording and not recording is about 5%, so please keep that in mind. First, let's start with 1080p low setting. I turned off motion blur because I prefer it that way. As you can see, we need to set the slider to 100% to run the game at native resolution with DLAA. Even at low settings, the image quality looks fine to me. We're getting an average of 56 FPS, which I think is quite playable depending on your preferences. If I turn off screen recording, I might be able to squeeze out a few more FPS. The minimum FPS is 47 with a few frame drops, but overall the frame time isn't too bad. The 5th percentile FPS is 51, which isn't too shabby either. One thing to note is that the total VRAM usage isn't displayed correctly here. Now let's turn on DLSS by setting the super resolution to 66%, which is the quality mode, resulting in a rendering resolution of 720p. We should expect a significant performance gain. I have to say the DLSS quality mode provides a very similar image quality to native resolution, at least to my eyes. If I were in the middle of gameplay, I wouldn't notice any difference. The results are in. We're getting an average of 74 FPS, which is about 32% more than native resolution. I'm not sure why the anti-aliasing quality is set to medium here. Maybe I accidentally changed it. Let's try the medium preset with DLAA next. Immediately I'm seeing more details, especially on the rocks. The overall image quality is noticeably better, but I don't think it matters much because we're getting much lower FPS, now in the mid-30s. The average is 41 here, which wouldn't be a pleasant experience on a big monitor. Maybe it would be acceptable on a small handheld screen. Let's turn on DLSS quality mode to see how it goes. The image is a bit softer, but it's very close to DLAA. And now we're getting an average of 54 FPS. I think this is the setting I would go for if I were playing at 1080p. Next, just out of curiosity, let's try the high preset. With DLAA, we're only getting an average of 32 FPS, and even with DLSS quality mode, the average FPS was only 43. Yes, we could go for the balance or performance mode of DLSS, but at 1080p, I wouldn't go below quality mode because otherwise the image would be too fuzzy even for me. The next thing I want to try is frame generation. However, as you can see here, I can't turn on frame generation with DLSS on, and the hardware accelerated GPU scheduling setting seems to be only available on Windows. So I have to switch to FSR for frame gen to work. The difference between FSR and DLSS is bigger than I expected. I'm getting a much noisier image, so I'm a bit disappointed. But the FPS is much better. The average FPS skyrocketed to 71 with the minimum at 62. This is a 65% improvement over the 43 FPS from DLSS quality mode with the high preset. The only concern is the input lag with frame gen, but we'll have to wait for the game to see how that goes. My previous experience with FSR frame gen in Ghost of Tsushima tells me that I shouldn't expect a pleasant result due to the fact that the base FPS is too low. Just for fun, I also ran the very high preset at native resolution, and I got an almost cinematic 21 FPS. The image quality looks amazing though, and with FSR quality mode and frame generation turned on, the average FPS is now 45. What about ray tracing? With a 3060 GPU, we really shouldn't turn on ray tracing at all, but I just wanted to see how bad it could be. With the low preset ray tracing at low and DLSS quality mode, the average is 31 FPS. The minimum is horrible though, only 17. This is definitely not playable to me. Turn on the frame generation and we're getting a much better result, 54 FPS average. but again, I'm concerned about the input lag, since this is a fast-paced action game. That's all for 1080p, I think. Now I need to test 1440p because it's my monitor's resolution. I don't want to waste my time trying the higher settings based on the results I got at 1080p. So the first thing I did was set the DLSS to performance mode, which means the rendering resolution would be 720p. With the low preset, I was getting an average of 70 FPS, but there were some intensive frame drops, as you can see here. The minimum number is not looking good, only 33. At 1440p medium preset, the average frame rate is 53. Strangely, the frame time graph seems much better. I'm quite happy with the result because my monitor is a 100Hz panel, so I can lock the frame rate to 50 and get a decent experience as long as the actual game runs similarly. Finally, I turned off the DLSS scaling, ran the benchmark at native 1440p, and the average FPS is 39 with the low preset. This is still not playable though. The last test I did was to run the 1440p medium preset again, with DLSS set to 50% and screen recording turned off. I gained a few extra FPS as expected, getting a 56 FPS average, and this is going to be the setting I go for once the game comes out.